Hello, friends. Welcome to Listening to the Verde Season 3, brought to you by Friends of the Verde River. Friends of the Verde River exists because we cannot imagine a world without a healthy and flowing Verde River. This program will inspire, engage, and inform you about everything that makes the Verde healthy, including people, land, and water. I'm Nancy Steele, Executive Director of Friends of the Verde River, and I'm here today with Rich and Nanette Armstrong. Welcome and thanks for joining me. Now, before I get into the conversation, I want to give our listeners a little bit of background about who the two of you are and why we've asked you to be on Listening to the Verde. I know Rich and Nanette because of their involvement in birding and volunteerism for the Verde Valley Birding and Nature Festival. They have interesting backgrounds, though. Rich has a PhD in nuclear inorganic chemistry from Stanford, and he spent 5.5 years in the Army as a nuclear and chemical officer. He's jumped out of airplanes in Korea, and he's been a professor of chemistry at West Point. He is currently, as he'll talk more about, a steward for the Sedona Wetlands for the Northern Arizona Audubon Society, and he's charge of and leads many field trips for Audubon. I get emails from him multiple times during the week telling me of opportunities to go on birding trips, which is wonderful. Nanette graduated from West Virginia University with a degree in biology, and she worked in nuclear medicine technology for about a decade. And she and husband Rich have been married for 36 years and have been birding during most of that time. They've lived in Sedona for about 11 years. So what I'd like to do is turn the conversation back to you two and first ask, is there anything I've left out of your background that you want to talk about?
No.
Nope.
No, you're good? Okay. So Nanette's a board member. You're a board member, hospitality chair, programs chair, and a Facebook moderator for Northern Arizona Audubon Society, right?
Right.
You occasionally lead field trips on your own, and you staff a booth at festivals, and you're the workshop coordinator for the Verde Valley Birding and Nature Festival. And Rich, you've got some unique history and background with birding that I think you wanted to tell me a little bit about.
Well, Nanette was going to start answering that question.
Okay?
Go ahead.
Oh, how we got started birding?
Yes.
Well, we've been married 36 years, as you mentioned, and we got a pair of binoculars as a wedding gift because we were going on a cruise. And the person that gave us the binoculars says, take these with you, you'll have some interesting things to see. And sure enough, we did. We saw many things with the binoculars. Among them were birds. So we came back a little bit interested in birding from our honeymoon.
And then I traveled on business back in those days. I had to give speeches all over the country, including in New Jersey in May. So the relative who gave us the binoculars took us to Cape May, New Jersey in May. This is one of the great hot spots in North America, and May is the prime time of the year in Cape May, and we went there and we saw a lot of birds. It's a great place.
Well, one of the birds that caught our eye was a black-burnian warbler. Little tiny songbird, but gorgeous. It's got this bright yellow chest and this orangey throat, a lovely song. And so when you see that, you say, wow, it catches your eye. But at Cape May, what we learned was we saw people that were all over the place with binoculars. People were actually out birding in individuals and groups, and we learned that birding is a thing. People actually go bird watching, they go birding. And so that's how we decided, well, this is an interesting hobby.
And then on January 1st, 1989, we actually have that date, I turned to Nanette and I said, let's try this birding as a hobby. And so we did. Now, some of our early experiences were rather hysterical, and we also did some good things. Traveling helped a great deal. We were in Texas at the time, so we saw great birds like a scissor-tail flycatcher, which is a wonderful bird. And we traveled all over the country, and literally we took all our vacation on birding trips, And that's pretty much how we got started. And as they say, the rest is history.
That's great. Was that primarily in the U.S. or did you go to
All U.S.
All U.S. Okay. So what was birding like when you moved to the Verde Valley, when you moved to Sedona?
Well, we moved here 11 years ago, and we're looking for a house. So what we did was we bought a yard on Oak Creek, and the house came with it. As we were mainly looking at a really great yard and a great house, well, it was impossible to find that combination. So we bought the yard, and the house came with it. Right away, we set up some feeders. We put out some water, pans of water. We put out different types of seed, black oil sunflower seed. If you put out one kind of seed, that's the one to do. Niger seed, which is also called thistle, millet, suet, maybe some peanuts for the jays, and hummingbird feeders. Oh, and so when working out, we had this a bird bath that came with the house, like a goldfish pond. So I'm out there cleaning that out because it was a mess, overgrown with cattails. And then I hear this bird singing. I don't recognize it. So we're new to Arizona. Well, what is this bird? And finally it bothered me. So I went and got my binoculars and looked at it. It's a northern parula warbler, which lives in the eastern United States. It shouldn't be here. So I heard him and got Rich. I said, Rich is a parula warbler. So exciting for that bird to be in our yard.
Oh, wow. And did it get confirmed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sang for a week.
Oh.
This is a bird that thought it was in Tennessee when it was really in Arizona or something like that. So we wanted the other people to see it. Now, the only birder we knew from having joined the Audubon Society here was the late Dina Greenwood, and she indeed came and saw the bird. And that was pretty exciting, but there were really no birders in the Verde Valley at all at the time. Now, Dina was the only person I talked to, and I happened to call her one time, and she said, oh, by the way, our field trip today in Sedona had a golden-crowned sparrow. Now, golden-crowned sparrow is a western bird that should not be in the Verde Valley at all. It turns out there's been 2 or 3 records, but that was our first ever bird chase. What birders try and do is always try to go for the rarities first. And so we rushed out to try and see that bird. We failed on the first night. It was getting dark. We went back the next morning, and sure enough, we saw the golden-crowned sparrow. Our first chase turned out to be a success.
Wow.
Well, I told you we put out bird feeders in our yard to start with. The first birds we had in our yard really were house finches and Anna's hummingbirds. But birds seem to bring in birds. It's kind of like if you're trying to look for a good restaurant, you look for the cars in the parking lot. I think birds are like that too. So birds brought in more birds. Well, Rich tells me, he says, keep an eye out for a great big hummingbird at our bird feeder because the magnificent hummingbird nests in the up Oak Creek Valley on its way to Flagstaff, and it has to pass through our yard to get there. So one day, sure enough, there was a great big hummingbird at our bird feeder. I'm like, we have a magnificent. And then I look and I said, no, that's not right. Turns out it was a blue-throated hummingbird.
Oh, wow.
Great big hummingbird with a blue throat, white in its tail. And it really is a bird that is in southeastern Arizona. Should not be here in the Verde Valley. And our son was home at the time, and he took a picture to confirm that it was a blue-throated hummingbird.
And I submitted that picture to AZFO. That's the Arizona Field Ornithology Group that documents rarities like this. And it turns out that this is the only record in Yavapai County of a blue-throated hummingbird. Even this is now 10 years later, there has never been another one. So that's always exciting to have the first record of a rare bird.
Wow, I think I want to have your house when you guys move out of it. That sounds like a great
Make me
location.
an offer, yes.
Yeah. Any other fun experiences you want to talk about that you've had birding around here?
Well, when we moved in, I worked on a yard. I enjoy people coming to my house, enjoy people coming to my yard. So I worked on the yard. I put up a lot of feeders, like I said. People give me things, I repair things, I find things at the thrift store. So I had an assortment of feeders. And we kept a list of birds that we saw in our yard. And we hit 100 birds. And our 100th bird was the western kingbird, which is actually one of my favorite birds. I think it's just a fun bird. And so we were given by another Audubon member something called the Yardie Award because we hit 100 species of birds.
Now, I wanted people to come to our yard. And as I met birders in the Audubon Society, I developed a distribution list. And I became, as you well know, the center of birding communication in the Verde Valley. Doesn't mean I'm the best birder, it just means I have that distribution list of now 160 people that when I send an email to you, 160 others are pretty much copied on that. So one of the experiences we had a Lewis's woodpecker show up in our yard.
Wow.
Now it's not a super rare bird, but at the time, this is half a dozen years ago, it was pretty rare for the Verde Valley, and it stayed a month. Now that's what you want. So I sent out all the news, and instead of having just Dean and Greenwood come, we probably by that time had a dozen birders come to see that bird, and that's pretty exciting.
Wow, yeah.
So our latest yard bird is a painted redstart. Showed up last year in December on the Christmas bird count day. That was very exciting. Not only was it a yard bird for us, but it was on the Christmas bird count. So that's yard bird number 173 for us. We need 2 more to get to 175. And I mentioned the Yardie Award. Well, we had one member that started that, and you had to get 100 species. Well, he moved, and we asked him if we could take it over, and we did. And we decided that 100 species was a little too difficult for most people, so we started with 25. And if you get 25 species that you've seen or heard from your yard, then you get a certificate. 50, you get a plaque. 75, 100, on up. And it's just a way to entice people to turn their yard into a bird sanctuary. Put out some water, some food, some cover, and keep a list of the birds you have seen or heard from your yard. And the most important of all of those is put out some water for the birds.
Now there are 4 types of bird categories, I guess you would say. You have year-round birds, you have nesting birds, meaning birds that are in the south in the winter and fly back to Sedona to nest for the summer. You have the opposite of that. You have wintering birds, birds that nest in Canada and fly down to Sedona for better weather in the winter. And then you have migratory birds, birds that start in the south and go to the north and only really stop here on the way. So other than our yard, of course, the next place we started was the Sedona wetlands. It actually formed during our time here, and it's good in fall, winter, and spring. But one of the most exciting things in the Sedona wetlands is you hope for an oxymoron. It's called a god-awful, miserable, wonderful day in the spring. What this means is you have a blue north winds, snow, rain, something like that, because the birds are all flying north, and they hit this cold north wind, and they say the heck with it, and they look for water, and they come down and rest. So on a day like that in the spring, you rush out to the Sedona wetlands, and we've had a few of these, and you see birds like a long-billed curlew, which is unusual here in the Verde Valley. And the last one of these we had a breeding plumage common loon, which is very exciting here in the Verde Valley. And of course, I call other birders, and they all rush out to see these birds. So that's one of the exciting type of days you have here in the Verde Valley.
So there's many habitats here in the Verde Valley. Desert, grasslands, canyons, mountains, creeks and rivers, ponds, and then yards. And in a yard, you can, you wouldn't get all of those in a yard. You can't have a desert and a mountain and a canyon and a creek in your yard. But you can turn your yard into a little oasis. A little bit of cover by planting some natural plants or some bushes. Even just a pile of twigs is a really interesting thing for birds because they consider that as cover. So all bring different birds to your yard.
Now, besides the Sedona wetlands, the next 2 places in the Verde Valley would be the Bubbling Ponds in Page Springs and Dead Horse State Park. On eBird, the Cornell Keep Track of Birds website, those 3 places all have over 250 bird species. That brings birders to those places. And then birders go out and find other places. There's places in Camp Verde, there's Montezuma Well, there's a road here in Cottonwood right next door to where we are today called Bates Road, which is good for geese in the wintertime. And you find places like that. Now, I'm a birding pal. There's a website called birdingpal.org. People from all over the world go to that. I've actually had people from England, Italy, Ecuador, as well as many places in the United States email me through Birding Pal, and they want me to take them out and show them some birds so you learn other places like that. One of the most exciting, this Birding Pal from California notifies me he wants to go up the Mingus Mountain on whatever day. He comes in the night before, and he's here for a little while, so he happens to go over to Dead Horse State Park, and he finds at the feeders at Dead Horse a male painted bunting. Now, this is arguably the most pretty bird in North America, and so, needless to say, the next morning, we rushed down there to see that bird. It stayed all day, maybe the next day. About 8 or 10 other people got to see it, and it was exciting for me because it was my 300th Yavapai County bird. Serious birders in Yavapai County, that's a goal, to get to 300 birds. And now we've gone way beyond that, and we are now actually the top 2 listers in Yavapai County. And I hate to say it, but most people say I'm not even the best birder in my own house, because Nanette is one ahead of me in Yavapai County. She saw a Baltimore Oriole in the yard, and even though I was out in my man cave at the time, and she called me instantly, the bird did not stay at all, and we'd never found another one. So she's one ahead of me as the #1 birder in Yavapai County.
And how many birds is that then?
She has 356, and I have 355.
Oh, wow. That's great. I'm not even anywhere close to you guys. I need to add up my birds because I actually don't know. I keep a list on eBird, but I don't count, so I don't know I don't know whether I've gotten a yardie or have even gotten close
I
to
think
it, so.
there's about 20 people in Yavapai County that have reached 300.
Wow.
So if you're going to be a birder, that's your goal.
That's my goal. That's wow.
Now you have to remember, Yavapai County is almost the size of New Jersey.
Yeah, it's big, and it's got a lot of different habitat in it. You just mentioned all of them, and we've got them all. I'm gonna stop you two, and we're gonna go for a short break, and we'll be right back.
Perfect.
To listening to the Verde. We're here with Rich Armstrong and Nanette Armstrong discussing birds and birding in the Verde Valley. So I've got some questions for you, but I wanted to start out talking just a little bit about the Verde Valley Birding and Nature Festival, which is every April. The history of the origins of the festival are a little murky. I need to do a little bit more research into that, but it appears it was started in 2000. And so 2023 will be the 23rd Verde Valley Birding and Nature Festival. Started by Barbie Hart, I'm told, and before Friends of the Verde River, the Verde River Valley Nature Organization, VRVNO, ran the festival. Excuse me. In 2017, VRVNO merged with Friends of the Verde River, and we've been running it ever since. So about, I think this will be our 5th year, of course with COVID in the middle there. This will be our 1st year running the festival. And the two of you came to the Verde Valley in 2011, meaning your first birding festival was 2012. So how did you get involved in the birding festival?
Well, we got involved because Dina Greenwood worked at Jay's Bird Barn, and we came in and we bought a lot of seed. And so she asked if our yard could be part of the birding festival as a field trip called a garden tour. And we said, sure, that'd be great. We love people to come to our yard. So she brought a group out. We saw 40 species. one of the main birds that people see in our yard is the bridal titmouse. Now the bridal titmouse loves riparian, so you have to be near the water to see the bird. And so the group came, they saw the bridal titmouse. Well, we just love being part of the festival. The next year, we asked Dina, oh, we want to be part of the garden tour again. And she said, well, we've decided that we're going to rotate things around. So we insisted. We said, oh no, we like it so much. We want to be a part of the garden tour. Please come. And so when the tour comes, we divide them in half. Half goes for a little walk around the yard down to the creek, and the other half stays in the house, where we have some little breakfast and we show them the feeder set up and then switch them out again. So it's a nice variety of the garden tour. So that's how we got started. We're on the field trip list.
Now, one of the most exciting, you always have good news and bad news on these things. You don't see birds you're supposed to see, and you see birds you're not supposed to see. The most exciting garden tour we had, Greg Miller was the keynote speaker at the festival that year. If you don't know who Greg Miller was, Jack Black played him in the movie The Big Year, and The Big Year is arguably the greatest birding movie of all time. So Greg Miller and a bunch of other people are standing out by the vans, and they're waiting for a couple of stragglers, and I'm out there with them, and this male Costas hummingbird, which is fairly rare in the Verde Valley, zips in literally like 10 feet in front of everybody and poses for 30 seconds at the feeder. The oohs and the ahs. When you're a field trip leader, you'll love to hear oohs and ahs.
Yeah.
Now, also for the Verde Festival, that's what I do. I lead field trips. I have led 3 field trips pretty much every year, every day of the festival, other than the garden tour. Most of the time, I'll lead them out to the Sonoma wetlands, where you see wonderful spring birds, like, say, a cinnamon teal gets oohs and ahs, or a yellow warbler that will get oohs and ahs. And I also lead the beginning bird tour the last few years. Now, with beginners, you have to remember every birder was a beginner at one time. Nobody starts as being an instant great birder. So what you want to do with beginners is you want to show them a bird or two that will get them excited. So one of the birds I try and show beginning birders is the wood duck. Yeah. Obviously, it looks like a painting. It's a gorgeous bird. And now recently, I've added a tour to Chuckwalla Drive in Cottonwood. This is a road that I discovered. I think I discovered it on a migratory bird count or something like that. But it is a 2-block long road where you can see a tremendous variety of species. And so every Sunday morning of the birding festival, for those people that want to leave early, I have a 2-hour trip to Chuckwalla Drive.
Well, I'm also part of the birding festival. I'm the workshop coordinator. I line up really engaging speakers. In the morning, people go on field trips, and in the afternoon, they bring their lunch and they sit down and they listen to a presentation. We have how-tos about ID birds, lively presentations, demonstrations even with a live bird involved. One is a kestrel we've had, which is the smallest falcon here in North America. So occasionally you'll see a live bird at the birding festival workshops. But I try to have a nice variety, and I try to go with the theme of the festival too.
Yeah, and I think we also last year had a condor, a workshop with a young woman talking about her experiences with California condor. What was her name?
Danae, right.
Danae.
She's 13. So we had a speaker that was 13 years old and talked about her work with the condors. It was just really a good talk, her research. We had reptiles. We had a reptile guy. And a lady with a raven who came and talked about her work with the raven, who is a hunt and rescue type of bird.
Wow. And just go back to Danae for a minute, because for a number of years, the festival raised money, festival participants raised money, and we gave a scholarship for a young person to attend a birding, birding camp. And Danae, I believe, was one of those people who got a scholarship and did that. I hope we're going to be able to do those camps again, those camp scholarships again. But, because of COVID, the camps didn't happen for a number of years.
Yes, Danae is going to be on my speaker list for this next festival, 2023.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I want to turn just a little bit to Northern Arizona Audubon. It's Audubon. It's a sort of a chapter loosely affiliated with the National Audubon Society, and there's these chapters all around the country, probably even all around the world. I know I was a member of Pasadena Audubon for a number of years, and so when I came to Friends of the Verde River, I thought it was a bit unusual that Friends of the Verde River was the one running the birding festival as opposed to Northern Arizona Audubon. But it's been a great partnership, and we've started doing more activities together, started participating more with birds surveys. We've been doing surveys, the Southwest Willow Flycatcher and the Yellow-billed Cuckoo, which are endangered and threatened birds. And I think the latest survey that we've had an opportunity to participate in is the Pinyon Jay survey. And so I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about your involvement in Audubon and how that meshes up with your involvement with the Birding Festival.
Well, we are very involved in Audubon. We were involved in Audubon in Texas, in Oregon, and certainly when we came here, one of the first things we did was join Northern Arizona Audubon. Now I have a spreadsheet. I have led over 100 field trips for Northern Arizona Audubon. A lot of places, the Mingus Mountains, various places, of course, mostly to the Sedona wetlands. And I'm also the coordinator of field trips. What this means is I have recruited about 10 different leaders now, so that we have a whole bunch of different field trips in various places. We've also added a new thing called the Big Sit. Now, Big Sit is really 24 hours, but we really do a little sit for 1 hour that's different from a field trip, because you just sit literally in a 17-foot diameter circle and you see how many birds you can get from that. We've just started that this year. Now, for instance, I'll lead trips out to the Sedona wetlands where you see wonderful birds like a ruddy duck with its bright blue bill, or in the spring a yellow warbler arrives back and sings its sweet, 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 I'm so sweet song, and that works out very well. Now, I'm also for Audubon, I became the steward of the Sedona wetlands. We have 4 birding sanctuaries, Sedona wetlands being one of them. The steward means I coordinate a little bit with the sewage treatment plant person and with Parks and Recreation.
So I got involved with Audubon. I brought cookies to the meeting. And so then I became the hospitality chairman.
Of course.
I'm bringing refreshments to the meetings. We meet 9 times a year, not in the summertime. So anyway, I was told that suddenly the hospitality committee chairperson is on the board of directors. So I became part of the board of directors. And when you're on the board, you're actually involved a little bit with each committee. Education, conservation, we steward 4 sanctuaries, we do festivals, booth sittings. This year we be part of the Science Vortex, which is in 2023. Last year we had a booth at the Fall Festival in Cottonwood, and our scarecrow, which we decorated, came in first place, winning the coveted Golden Veil Award. Now I'm also the programs chairperson. Very similar to what I do for the Birding and Nature Festival. I line up really good, engaging speakers to come talk to us at our meetings, and which are open to everybody. We meet at the Sedona Library the 4th Wednesday of the month. And so I also have given a presentation once on the mammals of the Verde Valley. And one of our signature mammals, I think, of the Verde Valley is the American beaver. It lives along the waters here of Oak Creek and the Verde River. Interesting thing about the beaver here in Arizona, it has never gone extinct in this area. It's never been wiped out. It's never been extirpated. So the beaver you see here is the beaver that the pioneers saw, that the Native Americans had. It's never been wiped out. And our beaver is a little different. They live in a bank. They don't build a lodge. They don't build dams, but they're here. And so anyway, that was an interesting thing I learned about the beaver. One of my favorite speakers is my husband, Rich, who he's an engaging speaker, and he is known as the Big Mouth of the Valley.
Yeah, Kay Hawkley, our president, named me the Big Mouth of the Valley, partly because I'm loud on field trips, partly because I send out the distribution list. And so my signature presentation is called Tales of a Beginning Birder, and it has some of the humorous things of when we started birding. It has some bizarre experiences that we have had birding, and it ends with, we actually discovered, back when we had only been birding for a couple of years, the first ever three-toed woodpecker in Rhode Island. There's actually a lot of story behind that, but sort of the moral of that story is that even a blind squirrel can find a nut once in a while. Now, we're also involved, as the Northern Arizona Audubon Society also partners with the Hummingbird Society for the Sedona Hummingbird Festival, which brings a lot of tourists to the Sedona area, the Verde Valley. I am the coordinator of field trips for that. Both Nanette and I lead field trips for the festival, and it makes money for both Northern Arizona Audubon and for the for the Hummingbird Festival. And I also have given presentations for the last 3 times at the Hummingbird Festival.
One of the popular things about the Hummingbird Festival is hummingbird banding, where the people come to our yard. A guy from Colorado comes down. He's a licensed bird bander. He captures the hummingbirds. He weighs and measures them, puts a little ring around their leg, and then he lets them go. So we put out 20 feeders, and we have over 200 people come to our yard, and he actually, before the hummingbird is released, puts it in somebody's hand. So it's really special to see a child holding a hummingbird in its hand before the bird zips off.
Wow, yeah.
So we put out a lot of sugar water, and we estimate that we have about 1,500 hummingbirds in our yard at the peak of its migration.
Wow.
And lastly, the Northern Arizona Audubon Society sponsors 3 Christmas bird counts here in the Verde Valley. I run Sedona. Nanette and I both participate in the Jerome Cottonwood one and in the Camp Verde one. And I won't dwell on that, but I'll just say that the Christmas bird counts, which are now all over the world, is by far the #1 citizen science activity in the entire world.
Yeah, and been going on for a long time. We are running out of time for our conversations. I just wanted to mention to everybody about the Verde Valley Birding and Nature Festival. Again, it's in 2023. It's April 27th to 30th, I believe. And on Saturday of the festival, we have a lot of free activities for children and families. So do come on by, even if you haven't signed up for a bird walk. There's opportunities to sit and learn about birds from experts like Rich and Nanette and others. And I want to close out with one more question for the two of you. The Verde Valley, it's an arid region with a river running through it, which is quite unique. Rich and Nanette, how important is that water for birds?
I'll just say 2 things. One, we have 2 important birding areas called IBAs here in the Verde Valley. They're both along the river. And the signature bird here is the common black hawk. They do a hawk watch in southeast Arizona. They count the number of black hawks that come north every year. This year they broke the record by a lot with about 400. And about 90% of common black hawks nest here in the Verde Valley along the Verde River and its tributaries. So if you want to see a common black hawk in North America, this is the best place to come.
Wow.
Yeah, the river is very important. It's a roadmap for the birds, actually. It's got the trees which they use as a landmark so on their migration. And the Verde River and its tributaries is a critical corridor, actually, for nesting, wintering, and migrating birds.
That's wonderful. And I had a special experience with a common black hawk. I was walking in Dead Horse Ranch State Park on a trail, and this big black bird kind of dive bombed me. Didn't hit me, but came very close. And so I'm standing there watching it with my binoculars and looking at it, and it's making those little noises they make. And then it suddenly occurred to me, she's probably defending a nest. Maybe I should leave. And she did it one more time. She flew over my head. back to her nest, and I got the picture and I left. But I've had a lot of wonderful experiences birding, and I'm so pleased to have been able to listen to your experiences, and thank you for all the work you do for birds, for the Birding and Nature Festival, and for Audubon. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for watching, listening to the Verde. And for more episodes and to learn more about the Verde River watershed, please visit verderiver.org/listening. And do come to a birding festival sometime soon. Thank you, everybody.
Listening to the Verde is brought to you by Friends of the Verde River. Please visit verderiver.org/listening for more videos and resources.